Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good break. We've had a great meeting so far, and so now we're here back for the second half of the meeting. There are just a couple of items in this half, and so we are, looking for continued engagement throughout each topic. But we're going to start with the disposal strategy, and I'm going to have Dan Pitzler talk a little bit more about that. Dan, you're up.
Thanks, Lindsay. So there's been a few modifications to the disposal strategy. Had a recent conversation with the mayor, and there's been a few somewhat new developments. So we'll cover those now. As noted, the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan update covers the next 10 years, but for those of you that have been around disposal facilities, 10 years is barely enough time to get something new and up and running. And I know, Jesse, you alluded to that in one of your prior comments. So we do need to take a longer term look. Maybe in not as much detail, but at least have some idea about what's down the road. The immediate disposal strategy includes using the existing landfill, which has about 7 years of life remaining. There was a recent aerial and study confirming that there's approximately 7 years of life remaining. And there has been some improvement in the ability to expand the landfill vertically. The county has had some positive conversations with the Pacific Missile Range facility. And just a bit of background, the challenge with vertical expansion of the landfill is not so much technical. It's more the concerns of the Missile Range facility and their operations with the higher level, grade level of the landfill. So that's something that has to be negotiated and approvals have to be achieved. But there's reasonably good understanding that it will be able to get some type of vertical expansion. The current thinking is roughly 7 years, but that still has not yet been confirmed. Next slide. So in keeping with the idea of longer term strategies, the county thought it's appropriate to at least explore what other options are physically available for the residuals after we're done with waste reduction and recycling and composting. There is a landfill mining study that is in progress, and landfill mining is a technique, while not widely used, has been used very advantageously at some landfills around the world. And it is anticipated that results of that study will be coming in the first part of next year. And it's possible that would result in quite a bit of additional capacity, but there are a number of challenges associated with that. So there is that's one long-term option. And then the results of the last siting study done for the county was the preferred site was the Maala Road site. And like any landfill site, it has its challenges. As I understand, one of the larger challenges is acquiring the property. I believe the property is state-owned at this point. The state has not indicated they're excited about selling or transferring the property. So there's a challenge involved with first securing the property before you even develop the site. Waste to energy, there's been a number of comments, and I think on the technical side, none of us disagree with the comments that have come in yet. As mentioned today, that certainly this is a relatively small amount of waste to build a waste to energy facility for. Although there are many small communities, for example, in Alaska, that do small scale waste energy with a little bit less technologically advanced facilities. But they have been done, so it is something that is technically feasible. Certainly would be more expensive than on island landfilling, and I would argue, more aggressive recycling as well. But that's something we felt should be in the plan, at least as a point of discussion. And the other options are removing waste off island, and they have challenges with them, very substantial challenges. Sending to H-Power, there are some statewide discussions that are currently happening. Many of the counties in Hawaii are short on landfill space. Others have a bit more. Are there things that could be done? But this is a very high bar to assume that you could ship waste over and get it to H-Power. As I understand, there's an ordinance that require a vote of the population of Oahu to allow waste from other counties to be combusted at H-Power. And then finally, you know, off-island disposal to the mainland or other nations is technically feasible and has been explored in the past, but there's a whole host of challenges, cost being one of them, that would lead you to other more tangible solutions. And I guess the final option that has been noted is yet another siting study. And I'm sure some of you are saying, why would you do another siting study? There was already a siting study done, which is a valid question. But the thought is, if for some reason none of the other on-island options were feasible, for example, if you, or put it this way, even if you could vertically expand the Kakaha landfill, what then? If that gets you, say, another, you know, you got 10 to 15 to 20 years of capacity, then what do you do? If you cannot develop the Malo Road site, well, then what? So the thinking is, you know, perhaps there'd be new information, new sites available. We probably would have to politically go through another siting study, even though you have a lot of good information about sites in a fairly recent siting study. So the long-term disposal strategy that we're at this time proposing for the plan is continuing with at Kakaha landfill, exploring vertical expansion, and then further evaluation of the long-term options. And the most tangible one, the most imminent one, would be landfill mining, because there's currently a study ongoing, and obviously it would not require the challenges of securing a different site. So at this time, focusing mainly on what you can do at that existing site, and keep the other options as potential long-term disposal options. And all of this, you know, all the comments that have come up today about the importance of minimizing what goes into a landfill are valid and timely, because obviously the less material going into such facilities, the longer the ones you have will last. And it's a valid perspective that I think should be maintained throughout this plan. So with that, we thought we'd open it up for comments now on the long-term disposal strategy. Let's see. I see Jesse's hand up. Why don't you go first, Jesse? There may be others.
A quick question to you, Dan, before I start. As you commented on waste to energy, one of the last statements you made on the topic was, and I'm seeking clarification, was that it might be more expensive than even aggressive recycling practices, but it's still worthy to at least pursue an analysis. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I would say at this point, it seems prudent to keep that on the table as a long-run disposal option after waste reduction, recycling, and composting. So regardless of the path, I mean, it seems very logical to pursue that aggressively. But at the end of the day, in the near term, the 10 to 20 year time horizon, there still is going to be residuals. So what are you going to do with them? And that is certainly a technically feasible option. So at this point, we think it should remain in the plan.
Right. Thank you for clarifying. So I'll try to express a sentiment as best as possible. There will, as far as I can see and imagine, there will continue to be a need for a landfill. For the record, I wanted to state my support of continuing to study the option of landfill mining. I think, as long as a study shows that it's safe and not detrimental environmentally or economically detrimental to pursue, then it allows us to continue to work in the site that we're currently at. So I will say that I understand the need for a landfill in the bigger picture of solid waste management on Kauai. I don't think that will go away. The hope is that we can create systems that make it that it's not even receiving the majority of our waste. And so as we look at some of these other options, I think there's almost a sense of frustration, because what we're seeing is that we're going to need a new landfill. It's going to cost a lot of money. It will be difficult to do. It will be, from what I understand, the Ma'alo Road site would have been the largest capital improvement project in the history of Kauai County. The frustration is that although difficult to achieve, there is a roadmap forward for an integrated solid waste management plan in which diversion is emphasized, infrastructure to increase diversion is pursued, and public education is heavily pushed, and is heavily implemented. And so the feeling and the comments I have for this process is all of these things are going to be expensive. $100 million for a new landfill at Ma'alo, waste to energy being expensive, just off island to H-Power, all of it. There are pathways forward to increase diversion, to minimize tonnage going to the landfill, volume going to the landfill, and with the combination of vertical expansion and landfill mining, there's a chance that we can make Kekaha work for 25 years. Maybe at some point there will be a need for a new one, but at that point in time, it might be a radically different looking landfill with a MRFs, site and a composting facility on site. There's a lot of options there. I think I'll stop there because I think that. Let me know if that didn't make any sense.
No, that's excellent comments, Jesse, and that's certainly in my opinion, just as a consultant, I'm not speaking for Kauai County, the longer you can stay at the existing site, the better. And it should be noted, if anyone doesn't know, a waste energy facility still requires a landfill. You end up with roughly 25% by weight in ash, and that's a non-trivial task to landfill ash. So all these challenges seem to point to an island community taking advantage of the resource you have, which is an operating landfill, as long as possible, while doing what you can to keep that thing from filling up. I mean, it's just a very logical strategy. And the challenge is, how do we get there, and what's the most efficient way to get there? So I think I certainly support your basic comments on that, Jesse, and I think we're trying to make that consistent, trying to get that to come through in the plan as best we can.
Absolutely. And I'll reiterate that real quickly is that it's going to be difficult and expensive to implement any of these pathways forward. And so why not go for kind of a holistic integrated approach that looks at diversion and source reduction rather than continuing landfilling. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben, you have your hand up. You can go next.
Perhaps on mute, Ben?
There we go. That always helps. I have some questions that are useful for me in thinking about this challenge from a guidance standpoint. I think that we're in a very difficult political position, but I think part of that difficulty results from a lack of information. And what I mean by that is that I think one of the driving questions we could really use to get progress on this is it foreseeable that the county of Kauai could afford both a landfill and a waste to energy facility at the same time? And if the answer to that is no, and I think that's something we could actually get assistance and crunch the numbers on. And if the answer to that is no, then this gets really simple. It just seems problematic that we continue to look at these things in a vacuum. And then I guess my other question is, are we giving away our current landfill space at a discount at the exact moment when there's higher demand for it? Because again, if we were to embed the cost of a new landfill or a waste to energy or both into the disposal costs we have today, wouldn't disposal costs be substantially higher? And if so, then why is it that we're continuing to give it away at a much lower price and therefore reflect to the market that, hey, it's cheap, just throw it away, versus driving solutions in the other direction?
Good comments. Thank you, Ben. Keith.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up with what Ben is saying, I think all this discussion is good discussion, and I think no matter what we do in the future, be it 7 to 10 years, be it 10 to 15, there certainly will be a need for a new landfill on Kauai. With that, let's just all make sure we keep in mind the time frame to which it would take to develop something like that. And I am all for diversion and providing those type of programs or implementing those type of programs which would prolong the life of a landfill. But again, we must remember it takes time to design, build landfill, and therefore we don't want to be in a situation where 7 years, run short. Maybe the vertical happens, but again, if it takes, just throwing out numbers, 8 to 10 years to fully develop a landfill, I mean, that's like now, that we really need to be thinking hard about that and starting that process so that we don't get caught in a situation where we're forced into a decision because we don't have space at the existing landfill. Yeah.
Good comment. Thank you.
Don't see any other hands up. Anybody else have any comments on the long-term disposal strategy?
There's a couple of public comments in the chat. Is this a good time to run through those, or do you prefer to hold those for the comment period?
Let's go through those now. I can see, looks like the first one was from Council Member Cowden. Do you consider that we don't have 7 years left? If it happens faster, what do we do? It's a great question, and that's I think the emphasis on the two next steps at that landfill, which is discussions with the PMRF about vertical expansion and landfill mining. And it's my understanding that the county is aggressively pursuing both of those two options to ensure that whether that's 6 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, you need something else now. I agree totally with Keith. The time is now to decide what is going to happen when that existing capacity is exhausted. So I think those are the actions that are currently being taken. The next comment, why is off-island disposal to H-Power listed as an option? We already know that their contract does not allow for importing from outside sources. It's a valid question. I think part of the reason for that is it certainly comes up in conversation. We've had public comments, people asking, well, why don't you send it over to H-Power? And I think it's important that the plan exhaust and have commentary on reasonable technical solutions that some people have suggested, and be with full disclosure about the challenges associated with those options. So I think that's the strategy why you're seeing that in there, along with waste to energy and some others. That shipping all the way to the mainland or other areas, it's technically feasible. And if you had no other option, it could be done. So I think it's important to have some of the less desirable, less likely options, at least have something in the plan about them so people know that they were considered. Another one from Councilmember Cowden, the biodigestion idea was not really given consideration. Why is that? Well, I think it was, but maybe not as explicitly as you might be looking for, in that we approach that mainly as a food waste diversion strategy. Most biodigestion is the most successful ones, and the ones where you get the most energy coming out the backside are with anaerobic digestion coming out of food waste. There are certain types of digesters that can handle a portion of green waste along with food and digesters. So it was considered. I think that the bigger challenge is having and we do have this in the plan, programs to address commercial food waste. It's just once that happens, exactly how does that get implemented? And Anaerobic digestion is one of the ways that could get implemented along with composting. Typically, you find that composting is cheaper than anaerobic digestion, particularly with my understanding of the energy market on the island, that you already have 100% renewables and probably are not going to get a very good price for any extra electricity that is thrown off from a plant like that. What else do we have here? It's being typed. I saw something come up, but it's still. So
there's one more from Councilmember Cowden, Dan. It says Hawaii Bioenergy presented that they would manage the majority of the organic materials, including the plastics.
I've heard some discussions about that, but and I know, Allison, if you have any comments about that, it's not something that as part of the consulting team we're too aware of exactly what that proposal would look like.
I don't know about Hawaii Bioenergy. I'm sorry. That was something that came up months and months ago, maybe 6 to 8 months ago. Then it kind of fell off the map. I don't know if Felicia's allowed to speak or not, but
well, sure. There's a
question.
Yes.
They met with all the different people. I mean, their presentation seemed too good to be true almost.
Yeah.
They had something at Gaylord's and they had a big presentation, and you know, they put all the money in, and that, you know, they would be able to not only get rid of probably half our trash, not say the construction and demolition kind of trash, but the softer trash, the household type of trash, and that any of the green waste. But they made it sound like they'd start eating away at our mountain, you know, our Pu'uopala in Keikaha, and it was a family of people who work for solid waste.
Was that
Kajiwara?
Oh, when did that happen?
It was I would say maybe a year ago.
Okay.
And they were, you know, very animated, and they had this guy who had been in the industry for like 40 years out here from Texas, and they showed examples of where they were doing it, and I felt like getting on a plane to go look, you know, because they had all these pictures of addressing just about every problem we have, though it was something like if we didn't make enough garbage, we would have to pay for the capacity. But KIUC was there. The haulers like Rita's was there. They would be able to deal with like the, you know, what comes from the livestock slaughtering. Those people were there. There was probably 40 people in the room with the presentation, and people were really animated about it. And they met with us individually as council members, and the mayor, and I think only Arthur Brune came at the very end, but all our name tags were there. We'd RSVP'd to come. So I was really disappointed that more people weren't there, but it was, best I could tell, it was compelling. And I asked in a council meeting about it, and which was the very last one before the waste management contract was over. And they kind of laughed, like literally laughed, and said that no, that wasn't viable, but they didn't even bring it up as an option. So I guess it would have been November of 2019 is when they had been talking. Maybe Brad Rockwell knows more about this, because Brad, I believe you were at the meeting at Kilohana, and I'm, you know, a little bit newer to this conversation. So I'm gonna stop, and maybe Brad has something to say.
Sure, happy to jump in. I mean, I'll just say generally, not necessarily to this, I think over the years we've been approached, it seems like every couple years, by somebody who's a small company with very little track record that has an amazing solution for us. and it usually involves some form of reducing our waste stream and providing electricity. And so it kind of depends on two revenue streams, you know, getting these people, nothing's free, right? So if anyone's going to come over here and build some infrastructure, they need to get paid for it. And that revenue stream they're going to need is tipping fees and electricity sales. And I'm not an expert in the former, but in the latter, I can tell you that waste to energy in general and any sort of electricity sales from waste stream is typically done on a base load energy sales where they want to, you know, they're going to produce so much for 24 hours a day, and we have to buy that electricity. And the reality is we're already operating our electric grid here on Kauai just about every day at 100% renewable from the morning to the afternoon. So let's just say there's 8 hours a day. I can't buy any more electricity. That just makes your economics that much worse, you know, 1/3 worse. And typically because of the scale of these types of projects, they tend to be a lot more expensive than other options we have like solar and battery storage. So, you know, every time I start kind of going down the road with one of these folks, it falls down pretty quickly for me. So that's why I don't really hold out any sort of hope for somebody coming in, doing something with the waste stream, and sort of solving all of our problems. Specific to this group, I don't know if it was the same one, but sometime within the last year, I did talk with a group, and that's essentially how it went to, you know, we had some just brief discussions. I informed them that, you know, we couldn't take any power for roughly 8 hours a day, and they essentially stopped calling me.
So I appreciate oh, go ahead, Allison. I was going to just, maybe this is the last comment on this one. We do want to get to the round table for all the comments that are on the plan. So
yeah, just briefly, I'm sorry, I was pulling out my records, my emails here, and I do see that we did meet with Bioenergy on a couple occasions. We were seriously, you know, looking at this, and then they just stopped calling us. I think the last thing that they said to us was that they were gonna, we told them, hey, you got to figure out your purchase power agreement. Like, you know, if your economics are going to work out, I don't know, like, you know, because at first they were talking about taking all the waste, then they said they could only take organic waste, and it kind of morphed until they stopped calling us. So we were really open to hearing what they were saying, but it just kind of fell apart.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing that, you know, typically these people will sort of work from a top-down approach and try and get, you know, elected officials and high-level folks excited about it. And then when it gets down to staff level, that's when all the holes are realized. But, you know, one of the things, obviously, KIUC, we're member-owned. You know, we're owned by the ratepayers. We share the same constituents as the county, so we want to be locked in closely whenever, you know, things like this are being bantered around. And so although the county was open to it, then those people turn around and they call me and they say, hey, I need a letter of intent to make any progress with the county. And I say, I'm not going to give you a letter of intent that you're going to then go shop to the county and, you know, say, hey, look, KIUC's on board, when we're really not on board. So we just have to be really cautious about outsiders trying to come in and pit us against each other to try and solve our problems. And I think just have more dialogue like this with all of our stakeholders here on the island and be working closely together.
great point. Okay, thank you. So this is really the next and last part of our meeting. And what I'd like to do is, you know, we put out a survey, part of the RSVP, that was asking for just some initial, you know, responses about the plan. As you know, we are looking for comments due tomorrow. And so what we have here shown are just some of the initial responses that we either got through email or through the survey. And I want to kind of prime your thinking to see what other people have said, in addition to all the great commentary that's happened in parts of the meeting today. So from SWAC members, we heard that, you know, they want to see additional information on the assumptions used for waste to energy and waste export costs. wanted a review of the short and long-term goals, and wanted to emphasize the importance of a material recovery facility and organics food waste ban from the landfill. From non-SWAC members, there was 6 different members of Zero Waste Kauai that responded to the web poll, and 5 of the 6 survey responses mentioned a MRF on Kauai. Various comments in regards to that, moving up the timeline, improving recycling rates, plans, and cost information. The respondent that asked about material recovery cost was also interested in costs for the waste to energy option and the new landfill. And then respondents also expressed some interest in the large scale composting, how the plan addresses the county sustainability goals and the problems associated with waste to energy. So that's just a real high level summary of what we've just seen from the survey or emails. And what I'd really like to do now is kind of like we did before, where we worked through the implementation plan. I could bring that back up if you want, or this right here is just showing all the different sections of the plan. I would like to go through each of the SWAC members, starting with SWAC. These are the 2 discussion questions that we had for you. Do you have any questions about information in the draft integrated solid waste management plan? And beyond any written comments, is there any key change or addition you'd like to discuss with SWAC members today? So how about we go in reverse order this time? And Scott, if you're on, we'd love to hear from you. Is Scott on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just digesting this, and I'll send over some comments probably from it, but nothing that I need to bring up right now.
Okay, great. How about you, Lane? Would you like to say anything now or have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions or comments at this time.
Excellent. Jesse, you're on deck then. You're up, I mean.
I'll try my best. I wanted to thank the Jacobs team for the work that you've done over the last year, or for however long this process has been ongoing. I think the language and stance of the draft and the plan is positive. I think it highlights the good work being done and shows pathways forward to get to even higher rates of diversion. So thank you for that. And I wanted to thank also everybody on the SWAC, on this advisory committee, for taking time to meet and work, at least discuss these options. The main comments I have is as a representative of Zero Waste Kauai. There's been quite a bit of discussion and homework and meeting around this idea that the kind of the journey of building a MRF on Kauai and eventually getting to curbside recycling, analysis of current landfilling and recycling costs shows that to build and operate a MRF wouldn't be necessarily any more expensive. There might be an additional $150,000 a year, but much of the revenue from operations of the MRF cover its own expenses, especially if we pursue creative financing options for the build. And so I just want to kind of push the conversation around this being a priority, and Councilmember Cowden is kind of pushing this conversation. Howard Green has been pretty amazing with opening up discussion. Gay and Robinson, opportunities to collaborate there. So I see opportunity for Gay and Robinson and for GID to participate in this effort and to benefit from it, as well as the county immensely benefiting from it. And I think that we could have some kind of topic-specific meetings around the costs of building and operating a MRF on Kauai, and to pursue it heavily. Zero Waste Kauai would love to help in ways that we can, and especially with, you know, educating the public and helping to do a lot of the groundwork to getting public buy-in. Besides the topic of the MRF, and I'll be submitting comments and some of the numbers that we've been seeing, and would love to even pursue further meetings with the Jacobs team to discuss this if you have some time before the DOH draft. And then lastly, I'll just say let's compost a lot too.
Thanks, Jesse. All right, Howard, how about you?
Yeah, if I could slightly back up, I apologize. I had my hand raised, but I want to touch on what Felicia and Brad were talking about on the bioconversion to gas. Fully understand Brad's position. It's just not going to happen. There's just it's too hard to integrate a large project like that into any system that Brad has. We have, as a facility host, potential host, we have talked to all these guys, and there's several more out there that Felicia didn't mention that have come to us and talked to us about facilities. And it led me to the conclusion that, you know, we're not going to be able to work with KIUC. It's not going to fit in their portfolio, but, you know, there's things that we can do, you know, to power certain loads we have, water pumps for irrigation and stuff like that, or conversion to other uses of energy, refrigeration being one of the major ones we have here. But, you know, it's not at a commercial level. So what I did is you know, back when we had the seed industry was big on the west side, they had a problem disposing of product. They had to certify that it was destroyed. And so I gathered up all the data on all the, you know, bioconversion available matter on the west side, you know, from animals, slaughterhouse waste, seed corn waste. It was a big problem for the hemp industry too. They had certain stuff that they wanted to see if that could be destroyed as well. So from a large agricultural perspective, a anaerobic digester made sense, but it was very, very small in scale and extremely expensive. And I haven't given up on it. But this leads me into kind of my overall comments on this whole plan is the cost of handling waste. I don't think is fully accounted for here. You know, I've often said, you know, and you've heard me before say, you know, we're charging $100-something tipping fee. What is the, you know, 200-year cost of that landfill closure and opening a new landfill? I argue it's more like $400 a ton. So I think, you know, everyone has to get realistic with the cost of processing waste. And I think when we do that, some of these options will become more available to us.
Thanks for your comments, Howard. All right, George, you're up next. If you're there, we aren't hearing you very well.
It looks like he may have had to drop off unless he's also joined via phone.
Okay. George, you there still? We can come back to you. Fred, you're up next then.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'd like to echo the comments that Jesse and the rest have made. Thank you to the team that put together all the hard work over the last year. These are not easy problems to solve. We've got a small town issue. We don't have enough mass to make a big difference, which means that we have to come up with some more creative solutions. No specific comments on the ISWMP at this point. I'm still very interested in where we're able to take our organic waste and beyond the composting itself, get it back in the soil where it can do the most good, where it can help our farmers. I think that's something that's a little bit beyond the scope of this, but it's something that we have to think about long term. The efforts that are going into changing the behavior of our constituents are difficult, but also extremely valuable. That's where the change really begins to happen. Having been to the transfer station when the line is long and needing to get your truck emptied before you have to get on to your next thing, it's very difficult in our environment to make that work. But if I have anything else, I'll go ahead and send in some written comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Fred. All right, Keith Suga, I think you'd be next, even though you're listed as Eli on the list.
No problem. No problem.
Sorry about that.
I want to say with regards to the plan, I believe the framework that is has been laid out and put together is a good one. You know, it does keep in mind all of the options, even the ones that may be not the most desirable options. So from a comprehensive standpoint, I think it covers the bases in our path moving forward. I would like to make note that with regards to our solid waste division and maybe urging the administration to provide the appropriate support for Allison and her team because they are an integral part of, you know, continuing this forward and making the recommendations to the administration. So to try to get them fully staffed so they can focus the efforts to do so. And then also, like what Howard was saying, I think it's worth looking into the tipping fee at the landfill. I mean, it's almost counter to what we do because we are a hauler as well, and some of our clients, customers might be paying a higher amount per ton. But I think that is something that should be looked at to be able to generate more revenue for whatever it might be, whether it be an aggressive diversion program or, again, something to do with expanding the landfill, what have you. But we know that we're going to be requiring or needing funding, and so that should be looked at.
Great, thank you, Keith. All right, Conrad's not here, so how about Brad?
I don't have any others. I'm kind of been hitting the chat, so I'll stand by comments there, and if I have anything further, I'll add some more in there, but nothing else to add right now. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you, Brad. All right, Ben, do you have others to add?
Just a couple. You know, I want to thank Jacobs for Chapter 12, and I haven't finished reviewing it yet, but I really, really appreciate the analysis in there. You know, just looking at Table 12.11 and really understanding how costs are allocated across the solid waste system is super insightful. Agree with some of the past commenters on the importance of really looking at a future cost of disposal as the metric for determining the tipping fee, and how important that is given the, you know, the limited supply and apparently large demand for that space that we have going forward. I think there's a language problem in our narrative, and I don't know how to correct this, but, you know, some of the narrative on disposal really kind of makes it sound like it's an extra add-on that we do kind of because we have to. And I'm specifically referring to the term funded as funding is available. And I think that discounts the value of diversion, and I think it kind of weakens the plan a little bit. So I don't know if there's a way to strengthen the language to make that a more integral part of our overall like long-term vision is to you know, what we want ultimately is for those programs to take more and more material out of the waste stream. And it seems like it could be explicitly stated as opposed to just right now, it's just kind of, this is what they do. We're just going along. We don't have any money. We can't do anything else. So that's a comment to give some thought to. And then last thing I'll close on is I really appreciated Fred's comments about, you know, this is a small town issue. And I think we've seen that, you know, we have small town solutions, and I think that we can find those together and, you know, help our farmers by more organics diversion and help ourselves by really understanding costs and reducing waste generation as an island, and really, you know, setting up our structures and payments so that is achieved. because, you know, nobody wins with these massive, you know, the amount of taxes we have to charge and increase for these facilities just goes on and on and on forever. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Sorry, hit the wrong button. Thank you for your comments, Ben. And so I think next we could go to Allison and Keola.
Hey, I thought we weren't supposed to say anything.
Oh gosh, you know, now I'm forgetting. I'm just looking at the list. I'm sorry.
No. I just want to say that I appreciate everybody providing comments and giving input. It's very helpful. A lot of these comments are right on, so it's super exciting, you know, to have this last meeting and really take in all this information. So thank you everybody for attending.
Yes, and I want to echo that. I really appreciate, we've got, you know, great representation this whole process, and thank you so much for all of the time and energy it's taken to, you know, prepare for the meetings, participate in them, and review the document. So we look forward to your continued involvement. I think it's a good time to move to the public comments again. I know that there's been a couple of things in the chat, and you know, jump in if you disagree, Dan or Elizabeth. I'm thinking it might be easier to just open it up to public comment, and then we can circle back on any of those comments as appropriate. Is that okay?
The only suggestion I would have is let's maybe go in chronological order of people in the chat. I don't know, Elizabeth, if you've been tracking that at all, but I think there's one that we missed right when we came back from break or shortly thereafter. And maybe just, if you can arrange that, Elizabeth, call people on who was first, the chat, second, third, and then we'll open it up to everybody. Maybe that's a fair way.
Yeah, sure. That's good. Joanne, yeah, I know we accidentally missed a couple of your comments right at the start. So if you'd like to kick us off and return to those or something else, that would be great. You might be on mute.
We still can't hear you, Joanne. Or are you able to get your audio up and running?
Oh, uh-oh.
Have we accidentally muted anyone, Lindsay?
Let me see what I can do. I have not, but let me try to unmute.
Let's see.
It's not letting me do anything.
No, same.
Weird.
Sure.
Well, maybe we could go, let your suggestion, go to the next person, and then we could come back and look at your chat comments if we have time.
Okay, that sounds good. It looks like Jen, you chimed in on the waste management hierarchy next.
Yes, I was kind of just commenting on the side to the chat because it was relating to the waste to energy. But I do, if anything, I just want to express my support of recycling moving up on the priority list, both in the implementation of a MRF as well as additional staffing in that department to support the whole recycling endeavor, from the MRF to curbside collections. And it feels like it's kind of pushed off to the side, like Ben mentioned, in relation to when funding is available. And I think those things should be addressed across the table before looking further into waste to energy or all those alternatives and the landfill. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. It looks like Joanne, you're unmuted if you'd like to go forward.
Yes, thank you. I know people like to mute me, so I understand. And no, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just referring to some other previous never mind. That was supposed to be a joke.
You go.
I again thank you to Jacobs and to the advisory committee and to Allison and Keola and everybody for such great work. Appreciate it. This is such an important plan. I want to point out that I want to ask first whether in calculating the life of the landfill, whether what were the assumptions about diversion, and if this is to be an integrated solid waste plan where the MRF and curbside recycling is supposed to be really the sustainable component of the plan. Has that been factored in figuring out the life of the landfill? To me, that's quite important. I also want to point out, it's fine when you look at long-term disposal, it's fine to start with things that are technically feasible. But in terms of what the recommendation of the plan is, certainly it has to be a combination of what's actually doable, and cost has to be a factor, and feasibility. And I hope that in the plan, there's going to be, I think it's a great idea to tell people that alternatives have been considered, but please tell them clearly why it's not feasible for a county our size, and what the most feasible long-term option for disposal really is. There's something wrong with our governance process that we spent so much time and money on this landfill at Ma'alo, which is now turning out to be unfeasible in the minds of most people. And all that money that could have, we have to think about, what do they call it? Options not considered or avoided because you're on a one track and you only have so much money. We have to be strategic in how we use our money. So that's the importance of a plan that has vetted things and comes down on what the clear alternatives are. And lastly, please look carefully at the zero waste analysis of costs of MRF and curbside recycling, because it shows that, please critique it. I'd like to get your expert critique. But so far as we can determine, it's a very cheap cost per ton for diversion and will not take a whole lot of extra money. Certainly will be far more cost effective than a landfill solution. And I want to acknowledge we need a landfill, but the size of the landfill, the length of our life of our landfill, all of that will be affected by diversion. So if we can really move with that, I think we'll see a lot of our problems be resolved.
Thank you very much for your comments and your joke. Appreciate it. All right, Elizabeth, I've lost track of who is next in the chat.
All right, so next, Councilmember Cowden, I think you had chimed in a little bit on the discussion about the biodigestion. So if you have anything to add there or anything else, please go ahead and jump in now.
I'm basically really good. I just am thankful to be listening in, and I appreciate the work that people have done. And I want to give, just a lot of recognition to the value of the group that you have. You have a very well-balanced group. And so for myself, I'm in the learning curve, been on it for a good decade, but I don't work in the field. So it's great to hear comments like what we got from Brad and Howard and everybody, even just on the pieces that I brought up. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and Ruta Jordans, if you'd like to chime in with anything, you were next in the chat.
Yes. Okay. I also want to thank you. I've never been through a process like this before, and it's been very, very educational. One of the things that has struck me since the first of your meetings. I don't remember when the first one was, but I remember I was able to attend it in person then. But what I've found going around on Kauai, I've been working with Zero Waste Kauai, and I've been working as a volunteer with both that and Surfrider. One of the things that I have found people feel very strongly about on Kauai is having a holistic environment, having a circular economy where you're reusing much more than you're throwing out. And people value being able to do that. And I've had so many people tell me that they would like to be composting, but it's not feasible for them. And what can they do? How can they get their organics to somebody who could do it for them? I feel a lot of frustration when I talk to people that they really want to see this happening. They believe in waste diversion, but the government doesn't have it high on their priority. So I think it's a good thing to know that just going around talking to people all over from Kikaha up to beyond Hanalei, this is what they're telling me when I go and talk to people about the thing with Zero Waste Kauai and with Surfrider. So thank you again for doing this, and I hope you all keep that in mind.
Thank you for your comment, Ruta. Any other comments in the chat, Elizabeth?
I don't think we have any new public commenters who haven't had a chance to speak again. So if there's anybody else on the line who hasn't chimed in yet and would like to, now would be a great time. Either you are on mute or I'm not hearing anybody.
Well, if anyone has any other ones, please go ahead and just put something, either hand up or in the chat. While you're given a few more minutes of thought, I'm going to go to the next slide. It's really the last one. Just to reiterate where we are in the process. We've made, so much progress. This is our final SWAC meeting, but there are some other opportunities to continue to get your input into the plan. As a reminder, please send your comments or that you don't have any comments via email to us so that we have note that you've actually, looked at the plan, thought about it, and have either specific comments or not. For those of you that have additional information that go along with your comments, for instance, the study on the MRF, that would be great. Whatever you can share with us would be very helpful. It will certainly help push the conversation forward. So we are looking for those comments tomorrow. We are going to be putting all the comments into the next draft, December 22nd, the DOH draft. They have, I believe it's 90 days of review time. And then following that, we will be working on the fourth draft, which is the public review draft. You will have an opportunity to continue to provide comments on that draft, and then we'll proceed with the public hearing in May and the final plan adoption in July. So that is wraps up where we are in our schedule. Just want to ask one more time if there are any more. Looks like maybe Ben is typing, or Ben and Allison are typing. It's a type off. Who's going to win? Oh, and
yeah, we have a couple things.
Okay.
So Ben has asked what the most useful format for comments is.
Great. Well, we're happy, really, any kind of comments. So if you have, I believe you have both the Word and the PDF. If you just have, Word is very helpful. If you're making changes, or comments, you can add your comment bubbles in Word, or PDF, you can add a comment bubble. We will also take just an email with a summary of some bullet points too. So we're pretty flexible. We just want your comments. And
looks like
then
Ben went back on mute. And then it looks like, yeah, Jalea, would you like to chime in with some comments as well? You might be on mute. Oh no. Mic not working. I mean, if you'd like to put something in the chat, I can absolutely share that with the group. I know it's a little bit tricky on the spur of the moment to type out a bunch of stuff if you had lengthier comments, but we will still be taking those as well via email, like Lindsay said. So we definitely want your feedback, and I'm sorry the mic issue is preventing that currently. I don't see anything else coming through. Oh, wait, yes, actually, here we go. So comments from Jalea. Just wanted to say thank you, and I feel it's important to look at permanent solutions. I think putting a composting facility on Kauai is important, as well as keeping the waste energy idea on the table. So thank you for those comments.
Mahalo, Ben.
Okay.
Great. Well, with that wraps up our final SWAC meeting. Just want to thank everyone again so much for all of your feedback and your participation. We really look forward to getting your written comments back tomorrow, and we look forward to seeing you in the future parts of this process and finalizing the plan together. So, oh, Allison, you have one more thing.
I have a question.
Sorry.
I hadn't thought of that until now, but like when we do the public hearing, we probably want to have this, like notify the SWAC about it and maybe have them come and support. Come to the meeting.
We'll definitely be keeping you informed of that so that you're updated on when it is, and make sure you remember, and we can coordinate a little around that. Good reminder. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks again, everyone. Mahalo, and have a great rest of your day.